This training is entitled Record Keeping, and this particular video is for an individual within the facility that is a designated record keeper. Now, this particular individual will not be necessarily filling out any forms, but they need to become familiar with all of these different forms within your records manual, and they need to know when they need to be used. So whoever's doing the task, the record keeper simply knows which form they need. She or he will hand that form to the person conducting that task, and once the form is filled out, they'll bring it back to the record keeper, and then the record keeper files it away in the right place. Now, if you're using a hard copy of our records manual, certainly you're going to use tabs, and these tabs are 15 different tabs that will categorize and file each form in the right area. Or you can do all of this electronically. So we encourage people to do this electronically, and certainly all you got to do is have the records manual on your desktop in a PDF format and have several folders entitled different categories, which I'll go over with you. And each category folder will have all of those items. So once the form is filled out, you scan that form and then you file it within that folder or subfolder in your computer, and that could be kept electronically on your desktop. So let's go ahead and begin by opening our records manual. And again, if it's electronic, you need to have a copy of it open on your desktop as you watch this video, or you can just print it out and follow along with me as I go through each and every form. So as you open your records manual, you'll notice that there is a section which lists all the different forms within the manual, and you'll see that it's a table of contents that has all of the different items, such as employee safety suggestions and unsafe practice report, report of safety hazards, accident investigation, and so on. And it goes all the way to HPV vaccine information fact sheet at the end. So let's go ahead and open to the first form. And again, all of these forms that you'll see here can be kept electronically, or you can use a hard copy. If you're using a hard copy, you're going to make a photocopy of the original form and always keep the original intact, and then make photocopies, and then fill out the form as instructed, and then give it back to the record keeper, and they will put it in the right place. So the first form is something that we talked about in another training before, which was the new hire packet training. But this is the same form. So this one is entitled Employee Safety Suggestions and Unsafe Practice Report. And this is a form that you'll be giving to employees of the facility for them to report any safety suggestions or any unsafe practice reports that they see within the facility, any conditions that they think that should be a safety issue. And the employee can fill this out either with their name or anonymously, and they will present this to you. So as an example, if you have a leaky plumbing in the bathroom and the floor is all wet when you walk into the facility, they'll write this down under where it says description of unsafe condition or practice. They'll fill that out. The bathroom floor is wet. Cause and contributing factors, they write down leaky plumbing. And employee's suggestion for improving safety is to call a plumber and fix the leak and wipe up the water on the floor. And then, of course, they answer the question, has this matter ever been reported before to a supervisor, yes or no? And the name of the employee, as I mentioned, is optional. And, of course, if there's a department, they can write there, and, of course, the date of the report. Now, that's the first form. And then, of course, the safety coordinator or the office manager, when she or he receives this report, they have to fill out what's called a report of safety hazard. Again, at the top of the form, they'll fill in the name of the facility, the name of the safety coordinator or supervisor, and then, of course, they describe in the first column and first row, and so each row will correspond to an actual report that you received from the employee, and then you basically describe the incident or the process or practice in that box. Then potential hazard, health or safety hazard is written in the next box, the next column, and, of course, the suggestions of how to fix or abate this particular problem, and, of course, what the action was that was taken to remedy the situation. So you're going to have maybe 4 or 5 of these reports, and you're going to fill out a row for each report that has been given to you and what you did about it. And you just keep these in your records manual in the filing system. Then we have certain documents for any incident or accident that may have happened in the facility. Again, we went over this in the post-exposure, or what we call post-exposure packet. And again, this form is called Accident Investigation. This is just a form to write down some information about the accident, the name of the facility, the investigation team, who actually investigated the accident, the employee or the injured employee's name and ID number if they have one, their sex, age, and job title, also the department and or location where the accident occurred. Then the date and time of the accident, reported to the supervisor, nature of the incident, nature of the injury, referred to a medical facility doctor, yes or no, employees return to work, yes or no, and date and time, and certainly injured employee interview statement, which is something that you're going to notice in the next following forms, and that's something that you can attach. A witness report can also be attached, as well as any photographs of the site and diagrams of any kind and things like that. And if there's any equipment records that you're attaching to this incident report, and of course the accident exposure incident description if there was an exposure. And this could be a chemical exposure or any type of bloodborne pathogen exposure. Then we come to the witness report. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory. If there was a witness to the incident, they fill out this form where the witness name goes at the top, the date, the witness's position, the interviewer's name, name of injured employee, date, time of the alleged work-related injury or illness, date and time of the reported incident to supervisor, and of course facility safety coordinators, facility name, safety coordinator's name, and then the statement of the witness. And the witness signs at the bottom, basically saying that they have provided this information with accurate information to the best of their knowledge. Then we come to the Sharps injury log, and there's two Sharps injury logs. One's for medical facility, one's for dental facility. They're very similar, except the terminologies are different. One is for medical office, one is for dental office. Again, very self-explanatory. We went over this again in prior trainings, but again, this is where you enter the name of the facility, the treating doctor's name, address, phone number of the facility, as well as the date it was filled out, and phone number by whom it was filled out, and their phone number, date of injury, time of injury, and then all the questions that are underneath there specific to that particular incident. Now, this is only filled out if this was a sharp injury accident. That means someone got poked with a needle or got cut with something that was contaminated. Otherwise, you don't need to fill this out. Then we come to exposure incident form. Again, for this form to be filled out, it has to be some sort of an exposure. Mainly, it's bloodborne pathogen exposure, but also chemical exposures could also be using the same form. You can see it's pretty self-explanatory. Here you enter the date, the employee's information, name, title, department, patient information. If there was a patient involved, meaning the instrument was used on a patient, if this was a sharp injury log, or if it was a blood splatter, again, which patient's blood it was. Then, of course, the exposure incident circumstances, route of exposure, whether it was a needle stick, splash, puncture, wound, broken skin, etc. And if there's a patient involved, then the source individual, source patient's antibody status, that means the patient has consented to a blood test. That's optional, whether they want to do that or not, that's up to the patient. If you do get a patient to do it, then you actually can enter the source patient's antibody status. Then, of course, the date of the incident, the signature, and date and title of the person who filled out this form. And then you also have this last piece here, which says initial date, the following information, the employee of the following items, obtained written opinion. Within 15 days, did you receive the evaluation back from the urgent care clinic that you sent the patient to, the employee to, and any medical condition resulting from the incident, also check that box. And then you maintain this record for the duration of the employment of that individual plus 5 years after they leave. Then you have what's called the post-exposure evaluation and follow-up. This is a form that goes with the injured employee to the urgent care facility. And then this is something that the urgent care physician fills out, and they have 15 days to get this back to your office. So make sure the employee lets them know of the 15-day time limit. And you can even require them to send it much sooner than 15 days. So I would recommend requiring it to be back to your office within 10 days. And of course, here also you have a place where if a source individual, which is the patient, refuses to give you consent, then you check the box no and then have them sign it. Also, if an employee refuses to get treated, then also check the box no and have them sign it. And that pretty much deals with the rest of it. Then we have the very, very important form called the Hepatitis B Vaccine Consent Declination Form, or what we call HBV Vaccine Offer. And again, we've explained this to you in the new hire packet, but we'll go over it again. There's two areas that the employee has to sign, and this is offered to every single employee within your facility because every one of them are at a risk of contracting bloodborne pathogens, especially hepatitis. So here, you offer it to them. You do not make them get it. You do not require this. This is completely optional. And the employee, once it's offered to them, they can either consent to it or decline it. And if they don't know what to do, then you recommend that they decline the offer, and then they can change their mind at any time after they contact and consult with their own physician. Make sure they don't sign both areas, okay? This is important, that one or the other is signed. Once the employee says, yes, I want the vaccine, or they can also choose to be tested, which is basically testing for antibodies. We call the titer test. And this test can also be done by, again, a blood draw. They check the antibody level in their blood, and then they decide, the employee can decide whether to get a booster shot, which is equivalent to one of the series of the vaccine, and they can choose to do that. Now, the key here is that employees have 30 days after they consent to this offer to get the first vaccine done or get the booster done within 30 days. If they wait longer than 30 days, then the office or the employer is not obligated to pay for the vaccine. So that's important. The next form is what you send to the person who is going to give the vaccine or do the blood test of the employee to check their titers. Again, the physician that's administering this vaccine or the test or the nurse has to fill this out. And this takes usually 3 to 6 months to complete. And all of the different series of the vaccine needs to be posted in here. If it's just a booster, then it's just one. But if it's a complete vaccine given, then it's 3 series, and it takes up to 6 months to complete that whole period. So you have to monitor to make sure the employee gets all of the series done. If they refuse to do it or they stop after the first series, then you have to let them know that if they stop and the 30 days passes, then you're not obligated to pay for those vaccines anymore, and it's all the employee's responsibility after that. Then we come to another form, which is an important thing. It's called the Employee Training Register of Quarterly Safety Meetings. Now, quarterly safety reviews or safety meetings have to be done on any topic of safety every 3 months. That's the minimum. Some facilities that are larger might do it more often, such as every 2 months or monthly. And some hospitals even do weekly safety meetings. But again, for you, as long as you do it every 3 months, we're good. These are periodic safety meetings that discuss some type of a safety issue within the facility. And then every employee, once you conduct this, the safety coordinator fills out the top of the form, and then every employee of the facility signs where the employee attendance signatures are required. And once they do that, then this form again gets filed away as records of your safety reviews. Then we have the annual review of aerosol transmissible diseases training. As long as you do once a year training, which is required for you by Cal OSHA, you will be fine with this. And then this is just an additional paperwork that everyone signs after they've gone through their annual review of aerosol transmissible diseases exposure control plan. Then we have, of course, the screening questionnaire for aerosol transmissible diseases. And this is, again, something that should be handed out to all clinical staff as well as anyone who schedules appointments, which these questions can be asked if you suspect a patient that might be displaying flu-like symptoms. These questions will determine whether it's safe to schedule an appointment or actually allow your staff to see the patient while they're waiting in the waiting area. And you bring them back in the back, make sure you put a mask on the patient, mask on the employee, and then they go through the questionnaire. Or the dentist or physician can do this preferably and determine whether it's safe to treat the patient. Or you may want to just send them back to their physician or actually send them to the emergency room if the symptoms are severe. Then, of course, you have the second page of aerosol transmissible diseases questionnaire, and that is simply a form that we put together that is addition to your health history questionnaire. You can use this, or you can simply add these diseases to your existing health history questionnaire that each patient should be given, and they need to fill out if they know of any diseases that they may have had in the last 2 to 3 months, and how long ago they had the disease, or if they're still suffering from the disease. And this is an important thing to be added to your health history questionnaire. Okay, the next form that we're going to be talking about is the Employee Training Register, again, for annual fire drill. And this could be, again, done once a year. And the best way to do this is to select a day and month. So the way you select the day and month, you say, I'm going to do our fire drills or emergency evacuation drill on the second Tuesday of every April, or fourth Wednesday of every January, or first Monday of every February. Doesn't matter. As long as you pick a first, second, third, fourth day of that month, then it always falls on that day. You don't want to pick a date such as, oh, we're going to do our fire drill on Valentine's Day, because that day might fall on a Saturday or Sunday where your office is closed. So you pick the day the way I just described, and that becomes your designated day for your emergency drill. A lot of people ask me, what if the building does an evacuation drill once a year? That's fine. You can do yours on the same day that the building does it, but you have to do it on your own. You do one with the building, and then you have to do your own, because you're going to meet at your designated location outside of the building, regardless of where the building wants you to meet, or whether they even have a designated location, which most of them don't. And then you're going to conduct your own fire drill or emergency drill by doing it on a day, whether it's the same as the building or not. Then somebody's going to yell out loud, fire drill, and then everyone evacuates. They're going to go down the stairs. If you're in a high rise, at least go down 2 flights of stairs, and then you can take the elevator down. So to practice going down the stairs. And if you're on a first, second, third floor, definitely take the stairs down. Meet at the designated location, and the safety coordinator in charge of your emergency drills will ask 2 questions. One is if anyone hurt, and if anyone's injured on the way out of the building, you want to notate that. And then, of course, the second question is how many people were in the facility. And then you do a head count. And then the third thing is you have them sign this form, which has all the signatures of every individual who participated in the evacuation drill. And that covers that, and you do this once a year. If you are in California, you should also do an earthquake drill, and the earthquake drill is optional, but I highly recommend it. The only difference between doing an earthquake drill in comparison to the fire drill is that you don't evacuate immediately. So you hold your position wherever you are, and you seek shelter. Basically, you go under a desk or along a sturdy fixture, and you lay down on the ground, on the floor, and basically wait maybe 3 seconds. You can practice a 3-second hold. So you count out. As soon as you hear earthquake drill, everybody gets in that position, away from glass windows, certainly, and you can stand also in the door jamb. But again, they don't recommend that as good as getting under a desk or alongside of a sturdy piece of furniture. And then you count out 1001, 1002, 1003, then you evacuate, and the rest of it is exactly the same way as emergency evacuation drill for fire. And then, of course, make sure everybody fills out the form, and the safety coordinator fills out the top part of it, and then everyone signs the bottom. This next form is for a training that may or may not be required for you, and it happens whenever it happens. And this is called the change of risk category training. So we have 3 basic categories of risk in a medical or dental facility. Category 1 is individuals who have direct contact with blood or other potentially infectious material. So in a dental office would be someone who actually places their hands in the mouth of a patient and comes direct contact with blood or bloody saliva. With a medical facility, the same way. If you do any procedures, you draw blood, you involved with any type of direct blood contact, that you're category 1. Category 2 would be someone who comes in contact with any items that might be contaminated, such as anyone who does sterilization or cleaning the rooms or taking the garbage out or handling sharps containers and things like that. And then category 3 would be none of the above, which is someone who's usually in an administrative position who doesn't come in direct contact or even indirect contact with any items that might be contaminated. So in any time during their employment, if an employee goes from category 3 to 2, 3 to 1, or 2 to 1, you have to conduct this training. And what is this training? This establishes that you actually went over the safety aspects of the new position that was changed for a higher risk. And you document this, the employee signs this, and this becomes a record. In case something, God forbid, happens to that employee in the new position, this will be required if you get inspected. They're going to look for this training to have taken place prior to the change of risk category. This is mid-employment, guys, okay? So then we have, of course, another one similar to this, and that is called a new hazard introduction. And this is if the facility decides to introduce a new hazard into the work area, such as a new equipment, maybe a laser equipment that you decided to use now in the facility, or maybe a new x-ray equipment, or maybe a new autoclave that, these are all, hazardous equipment. Could also be a new chemical introduced to the workplace. So if that ever happens, you also have to hold a training and let every employee know of the safety aspects or hazards of that new introduction of an equipment or chemical into the workplace. And this is something that you need to do whenever it happens. Again, if God forbid something goes wrong with that equipment or someone gets injured with that equipment, any inspector from Cal OSHA is going to look for that training to be in place. So this is an important training. Then we have the initial employee training, safety training document, which we went over in detail in the new hire packet training. And again, this is something that an employee checks all these boxes, but before they complete this, they have to complete the new hire checklist, which we'll get to at the end. But this is something that is part of the new hire packet, and we went over this in detail, so please watch that video if you haven't yet, and it describes exactly the whole process. Then we have the same exact form in Spanish and something that you can use. Then if you use cold sterilization in your facility, things like Cidex, Sporox, compliance solution, Cavicide, anything with glutaraldehyde in it or non-glutaraldehyde cold sterile solutions, you need to keep a change of solution log. And that's pretty self-explanatory. It says, who changed it, what date that it was changed, and basically it goes through each and every time you change the solution. Now, these solutions are usually 28-day solutions. That's what they call them. So that means you have to change them every 28 days. So the brand of the product goes here, the person changing the solution, the date the solution was changed, as well as the expiration date of the solution, which is the 28th day. Those all have to be noted, and then you keep this log, and as they fill up, you get a new one, and you start all over again. You need to keep these logs for at least 6 months to a year, going backward. So they're going to look for that if you get inspected. If you use an autoclave, a steam sterilization, or we call an autoclave, you need to do a cleaning of these autoclaves. So the recommended cleaning, depending on which type of autoclave you have, is listed in the owner's manual of that autoclave. But it's normally, if you don't have the autoclave manual or you don't know where to go to look for it, then the normal cleaning schedule is minor cleaning once a week and one major cleaning once a month. So that's something you want to keep a log of. Again, the date the autoclave was cleaned and who cleaned it. It's a real simple log. Now, if you're a dental facility, there's an additional log you have to keep of your changing of traps, of any chairside trap and vacuum trap. If you're a general dentist, and certainly periodontists are exempt from this, as well as oral surgeons, but general dentists and other endos and orthodontists is also exempt from this. But if you deal with replacing old fillings, you know who you are. If you do, you need to keep a log of changing of the trap. So the chairside trap, because you suction old filling out of the patient's mouth, it catches at the chairside trap, which is a small screen. You need to make sure that you keep track of the changing of those screens, as well as the vacuum trap, which is a sediment filter right at the vacuum that collects sediments of, again, anything that's suctioned out of the mouth. And make sure that you know when you're changing that. And if you have installed an amalgam separator as a dental facility, you also need to know that that unit also has to be changed. That's usually once a year. Chairside traps usually once a month, maybe once every 2 months. You know when it's affecting your flow, that's when you're supposed to change it. As well as the vacuum trap, there's a sediment that collects at the bottom of the trap. And when the vacuum system is off, when the sediment level reaches halfway up the cup, that's the time to change it. And then the amalgam separator also has a fill line, and certainly takes much longer to fill up the amalgam separator. That, again, once your fill line is reached, then you need to replace that. Now, when you replace any traps, it's also important to note that employees must be fully protected with eye protection, mask, utility gloves, not exam gloves, and gown. So that's very important that you do that. And we do have a protocol, a written protocol on the best way to handle amalgam in your facility, and that's something that you can obtain from our website. Now, the next form is a very important form, and this has to do with your monthly inspection of your safety equipment and anything else that you like to check on a monthly basis. But certainly some of the items are required by law. Now, when you look at this form, you'll notice that it has columns and rows. Rows represent months of the year, so January, February, March, April, May, and so on and so forth. So let's say you're starting out in August of 2015. So you start with 8, and then you write 15 as the year. Then a staff initial goes to the next column, and then you begin to do your inspection of your eye wash station, which requires you to do a 3 to 5 minute flush, even though it says 5 to 10 minutes, but 3 to 5 minutes is plenty. Then you go into your emergency kit, you check for items missing as well as expired medications. Then you check your O2 tank, and you make sure the O2 tank is a designated O2 tank for emergency use only, that is not being used for treatment, that it's ready to go, meaning the hoses are attached, and it has at least a half-hour supply of oxygen in a portable manner at a rate of 4 liters per minute. Then you check any fire or smoke alarms that you may have to make sure the battery is good and it's working condition. Fire extinguishers is the next item that you check, and that you check for the seal not being broken, the plastic seal covering the pin. So if anyone pulls the pin, you're going to break that seal. And if you see one that's broken, or if you see a fire extinguisher on the floor, not hung on a wall, at least 3.5 to 5 feet from the top of the fire extinguisher to the floor, that fire extinguisher needs to be mounted. There has to be a sign above the fire extinguisher that says fire extinguisher in all caps. And you need to make sure that whatever the date you see on the tag on the fire extinguisher is the last inspection date. You add a year to that date, and that's the expiration date for your fire extinguisher. So keep that in mind. Fire extinguishing services are available to come and check your fire extinguishers on an annual basis. And a lot of people ask me, how many fire extinguishers do I need to have in our facility? Well, according to Cal OSHA, for every exit in your facility, you need to have a fire extinguisher. So if you have 2 exits out of the facility, you need 2 fire extinguishers. The fire department says that a fire extinguisher cannot be more than 75 feet from the furthest corner of your office. So if you're standing in the center of your facility and you have more than 75 feet from the furthest corner of your facility, you need at least 2 fire extinguishers strategically located in the facility. Again, pick an area where nobody's going to bump into it. The top of the fire extinguisher to the floor has to be within 3.5 to 5 feet. That's an ADA rule, Americans with Disability Act. And so make sure that a handicapped person in a wheelchair can reach and grab the fire extinguisher. The next item is the first aid kit. Again, we check for make sure that everything that's supposed to be in there is there, and there's no expired meds like aspirin or any ointments that may have expired. Then we look for spill kits. Now, at a minimum, you have to have a bodily fluid spill kit in the facility for patient regurgitation or any blood spills. And certainly chemical spill kits are required if you use any hazardous material in your facility. If you're a lab and you deal with methanol and xylene and formalin and all of these types of chemicals, you have to have a chemical spill kit for those chemicals, in addition to the bodily fluid spill kit for a general practice of dentistry or physicians. Now we come to sharps containers. We want to check sharps containers, make sure they're there whenever in any room that sharps are being used or any injections are being done or any procedures being done, we use disposable sharps. You cannot have a centralized sharps container anymore in a sterilization area and you're carrying sharps back and forth from room to room. That's illegal now. And so you have to dispose of a disposable contaminated sharp at the shortest point of distance, which means in the room where the actual procedure is being done. So make sure you have sharps containers in every room when that is happening. And then last but not least, we check our refrigerators to make sure there's no cross-contamination going on in the refrigerator. such as food and medication in the same refrigerator compartment. And so once you do this, every month a different employee has to do this. So you got to get everybody involved in this monthly checklist where each month a different employee does this inspection. If you have more than 12 employees, then you can group them in teams of 2s or 3s and have each team do the inspection each month. So as long as every employee at least does this once a year, then you're going to be compliant. We have also a housekeeping log. Again, this is not required. This is an optional form. And this is to make sure that when you walk into the facility in the morning, whoever opens the facility, the first person in, does a walkthrough to make sure that the janitors took the garbage out, that the facility was cleaned and disinfected properly before patients walk in and are treated. So this is something that I highly recommend that you keep, but again, it's optional. It's something that you may or may not want to use. The last couple of forms here, we have ESIP Safety Sharps In Statement. This is for medical facilities mostly. This is something that each employee that uses any kind of a sharp, people who give injections, who draw blood, need to sign this form. And the employee simply prints their name at the top, and the facility name goes after employee of, and then the name of the facility, and then they sign and date it after reading the. If you have any questions about this form, please contact us and we'll walk you through this. Then, of course, we have a body of policies here called the Code of Safe Practices. We went over this in the new hire packet initial employee training module. And again, these are a bunch of safety procedures and safety policies that every employee is required to read and understand. So this happens at the time of hire. And certainly if you're a new subscriber to our service, every employee is treated as a brand new employee. So every single one of them must read this document. And there's a few pages of this, and you can certainly look through it. And if you don't understand something or a word that you may not know the meaning of, please ask your supervisor or contact us, and we'll walk you through this. This is very, very important to be read and understood by all employees of the facility. So about 6-7 pages. And then we finally come to the master checklist for new hire training. And this, again, we went over in detail in the new hire packet, part of the new hire packet in the initial employee training module. And if you haven't watched that, please do that. Otherwise, you will be familiar with this already and how you're supposed to fill this out. I've given a very detailed explanation of it in that video. Then we have what's called our helpful HIPAA policies. Again, these are some general policies that we hope that you adopt within your facility that deals with HIPAA. We have a whole video on this explaining each and every one of those, and hopefully you've already watched that video. Certainly as an office manager or safety coordinator, you need to definitely watch that video, and we recommend that everybody watches that video. Then we have the last piece is an information sheet on hepatitis B vaccination. So if an employee comes and says, well, I don't know whether I should get the vaccine, I've never heard of the hepatitis B vaccine, and I'm not sure what to do. So first of all, you refer them to their own personal physician. And if they don't have a physician, then you have usually a hotline, like a medical hotline, through your workers' comp insurance company that employees can call and ask questions. But this is a 3-page information sheet on hepatitis B vaccination, all the safe and effective information about it, contradictions to the vaccine, vaccine schedule, all that stuff that they ever want to know about the hepatitis B vaccine. This was printed from the Center for Disease and Prevention, and this is a very good information to give. The last thing you're going to see in your records manual is a list of tabs, which begins with accident documents. Number 2 is Sharps injury log. Number 3 is vaccination documents. Training records, number 4. Monthly checklist, number 5. Training certificates, number 6. Sterilization logs, number 7. Safety suggestions, number 8. Inspection documents, number 9. Hazard waste removal documents, number 10. ESIP documents, number 11. Radiographic monitoring, which would be like spore testing or any type of dosimeter that you would have. Sterilization logs. 13 is OSHA logs. That's OSHA log 300, which you may not even have to do, but it's there anyway just in case. And of course, any ATD exposure control plan documents, such as your annual reviews, and then we have also the miscellaneous tab. So this is how you would organize, if you're going to do this electronically, this is how you organize all your subfolders in your records manual, and you title them with these titles. If you're going to use a hard copy, then we provide you with the tabs to keep everything organized. So if in case somebody comes to do an inspection, you have everything in one place where you can find very quickly. And pretty much this concludes this training entitled Record Keeping. I hope this was informative. And again, thank you so much for your time.